I suppose I'm a football coach, so I suppose it's teaching slightly. Not quite at the same level, so.
A little bit more chilled though when you're a coach, so mate, on being on the field and having that approach than being in the classroom. So can be a different environment, mate, and it's difficult sometimes when you try and switch that mindset from one to the other.
No, that's interesting.
Right, I've got some videos below, Luca. All good, mate.
Fab, mate. So when you're literally on the right slide that you want, tell me when you want a video, or you can literally add them in and we'll play it however you want. But if you're struggling, give me a shout, mate, and I'll drop in and support you, all right?
Okay, top man. Thank you very much.
All right. So when you're ready, George, we're off and running. But cheers for joining tonight, guys. So obviously tonight we got Kallum joining us. So his first appearance on the podcast. I've literally been chatting to him for about 2 years of getting him on the podcast, and he literally lives the closest to me. And you guys have been on the podcast more times than him. So it's nice to add him into the group because he's a lovely chappy, really. And he's got lots of different things to experience. So this is part of the Young Sung Heroes series. So literally the third time that Jordan or second time, sorry, that he'll be hosting as part of this series. The first time Phil will be on this series as well, and first time for Kallum. So it's nice to get Phil across 3 different series and Jordan across 3 different series as well. So really interesting time. And tonight is going to be about Jordan, and he's going to be practically hosting this episode while I take a back seat, which is going to be nice for once, and it's going to be over to him. And literally Phil's going to drop in and co-host essentially with him because of his experience, and bring up some questions from the last few discussions we've had. Just shows his experience. So it's going to be more or less on the guys tonight, and that's how you chuck someone into a leadership role. But we're going to talk about someone who's very passionate about what he does, someone who's very forthcoming and loving and open, and has a very great story, which is very raw, very open, very honest, very heart-touching, and he shares it with us tonight. And that is your man, Mr. Jordan Stringer.
Thank you, Luca. No pressure. Cheers, gents. It's great that I'll be able to do this talk for you guys, and thank you for taking the time tonight as well to listen. And of course, we're going to go through a presentation, but if there's any time that you feel that you want to bring anything up, please feel free. Or just if you want to say like, or got a question or where, you know, just say. That's not a problem. Okay. If not, if there's any questions you want to save till the end as well, whatever's best really for you guys. Okay. So we're ready. Next slide, Luca, please, mate. So I am 26 years of age, born and raised in Upminster in London. Was there all my life. Then I moved to Tiptree. Different outset, different city life. Upminster's more of a town. Tiptree's more of a village. Studied at Hallmead between them years, having sixth form them years as well. So for you guys, I'm giving you a bit of insight about my story, my life to date. You may think at 26 I'm young, but that's why I want to try and, I suppose, inspire as many people as I possibly can. I want to talk to you about what I've had difficulties with in school, in education, and all throughout my life, really, in the sense of different outside settings, outside of football, as well as in football. That's been my saving grace, really. So yeah, that's the introduction. Next slide, please, Luca. So very small writing, but obviously born with my mum, my brother Terry. My mum and dad separated at a very young age, so I don't remember anything too much, obviously, when I was younger. But obviously not having a mum and dad in the house was always very difficult. I had my brother that I was, I suppose, not very close with, if I'm honest, because we had different interests, different age gap. There was like a 6-year age gap between us two. So the relationship wasn't always clicking, if you like. He always used to follow Arsenal when he was younger, much to my dismay. But I'm not going to get into controversy about that. But football, it brings the best out of me. I do it because I've seen so much joy within the game, and passion is a big thing of mine. That I feel that if you've got something that you really've got a forte in, go and make your dreams come true. I have dyspraxia. I'm going to put it to you guys. I mean, does anyone know what dyspraxia is?
Pitch in then, Cal. Pitch in, son.
I can't remember exactly, but I have heard of it before.
Yeah, so pretty much dyspraxia is where it affects your coordination element. So there's dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, and all the different disabilities, unfortunately, that there is. Dyspraxia correlates with mainly motor coordination, so it affects, in a sense, for me, when I was younger, I couldn't do, say, buttons up on my shirt, couldn't do ties, couldn't do shoelaces. Even to this day, with I suppose even with football, you could say it was until a very late age that I could really kick a football, even because my body couldn't coordinate. So I was out there at a young age trying to kick a ball, and I could only kick it from here to here. That was very short distance, but that was an achievement. But no team would take me on purely because of the fact that I had dyspraxia, because it's labelled as clumsy child syndrome, because you can fall over and everything like that. I felt that was quite dismissive personally. Now things have improved within the game. It's inclusive for all. But I think with football, as I've said to you before, particularly you, Phil, and Luca, is that it's not just about winning games as such. It's all about the togetherness. It's the drive to do well, and to help people improve people's lives.
Absolutely.
So, of course, I had all that when I was younger, which was very difficult in itself, particularly in my schooling years, which I'll come to very shortly. But that is what dyspraxia is in a nutshell. I mean, even now, there was times where with my driving, I couldn't have the confidence to go and do driving lessons because of the coordination element. But again, to find a tutor, to find someone that helps you with driving lessons, there's not many out there that was willing to take me on because of having dyspraxia. And one of the common things that was coming up with that was, well, what if you get in an accident because you could be clumsy? That is again another side, another kicking for teeth, if you like, if you're putting it politely, that I had to face. So yeah, that's one experience, if you like. So next slide, please, Luca. Bit mushy, but this is my family that have helped me throughout absolutely thick and thin. So if it wasn't for these, I wouldn't have got to where I am today. Obviously, my dad's top left, my granddad's in the middle there with my brother. My nan is like my second mum. So all these people have had such an influence on my life. They don't get me wrong, my mum and my nan was very supportive of dyspraxia, and they knew what struggles there was. But my dad, when I was younger, particularly, didn't understand so much. Different ways, different thinking. It used to be that, for example, one of the things that we used to do, like when I did see him on the weekend, which was every Saturday, we used to go either bowling or go-karting. Now, bowling was one of the things that I loved, but because again I couldn't do my shoelaces on my with my shoes, pretty much he always used to criticize me for it, saying, well, why can't you do it? You should practice more. But thing is, no matter how much you try and practice, it's like a mental block inside. So it makes it feel worse and worse because you feel like I should be able to do this, I should be able to do this, but you can't. So it sort of deprives you from some independence in respect. With karting, it was the same with karting. Like, I mean, I don't know if you gents have been go-karting, probably have. But you put a balaclava on as well before you put your helmet on. Again, I always used to get my balaclava the wrong way around. Didn't mean to, but I always used to get pasted by my dad saying, well, you got that the wrong way round. And there was one time where actually we was meant to go out for a race, and he said, because you can't get it the right way round. You know, I'll go off and race. You can stay here and watch until you get it right, which made me feel again quite shit, quite crap. You know, sorry, no Phil there, but I hope that's okay, Luca.
Of course it is, mate. You can always be open and honest, and it's you know, that's your feelings upon it. But when it comes down to that, and you might come onto it, but just as we're on this sort of subject, how did that affect your relationship then between you and your dad, especially over the forthcoming years, on the basis of that?
I think it was very difficult. It was. I felt like he really didn't understand. I mean, there was times that my mum had to have so many chats with him, even though they separated. They did get on quite well when we saw each other weekly, but there was always like I used to come home and I said to my mum like, my dad just doesn't understand, you know, that I have these troubles, and no matter how many times she was trying to say it to him again, it just wouldn't register. He would have expected me to do absolutely anything. So it put a bit of a strain on our relationship, but obviously between that relationship between my mum and dad, it was affected as well. But I think as the years have gone on, and because I've got older, and because he's, I don't know, maybe changed, seen different ways why I've struggled. He's been a bit more understanding now. I mean, as I say, with shoelaces, still can't do them. If I've got football boots, I've got to have slip-on boots because I can't do for laces. It's an easier way of doing things, and it's magic. But obviously, I would like to do laces, but again, I don't want to be through that stage of I feel like I should do this, and it's just wearing me down for more times that I'm trying. So yeah, in answer to your question with that, with how it's affected relationships with my dad particularly, it did then, but as the years have gone on, I think he's understood a bit more, you know. So yeah, I mean, is there anything else you guys want to ask? If not, no problem.
Did you start to doubt your abilities even more? Like, obviously, like, you know, that you can see that has a massive negative impact on your self-belief, your self-esteem, you know, feeling as if like you just feel like you're never gonna amount to anything. You feel like, you know, it's always gonna be, no matter how much you try, you're always just gonna feel like, because of that lack of understanding, it's like you start to have that self-belief where it's like you don't really kind of like you don't know whether or not you'd be able to achieve the smallest of things.
To be fair, Cal, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I couldn't, you know, it really did play in my head. I was thinking, you know, is this, you know, you know, it was getting to a stage that I was thinking, yeah, I can't do this. Why can't I do this? And obviously, when you're young, you want to try things for yourself, obviously, and that's your own way of learning, I suppose, for learning process by doing it independently. But again, because I was so dependent on other people, I suppose,
Yeah,
it deprived me from that independence at a young age, which I found very, and I still feel quite hard to deal with over the years. That for more I've realised that I thought, blimey, my childhood should, or any childhood really, not just mine, but everybody's childhood should be a happy time, because there should be the best years of your life in the sense of no stress, no worries, no anything, if you like. I mean, don't get me wrong, I appreciate there probably is difficulties out there. As we see when we're coaching, we see that with individuals, you know, but I think, yeah, I sort of had to even fight then to try and be listened and understood, really.
Do you feel like that was the kind of, like, that approach was the push you needed to prove yourself and like your dad, in relation to the fact that it's like, you know, like, even if you would have got the more moral support and the approach would have been different, do you feel like because of the kind of more the negative approach towards it, do you feel like that pushed you more to want to achieve more?
To be fair, at that age, I think because I was so low in self-confidence, which I'll go on to in a few slides' time, what had happened. But I think it's more as I've got older that I've wanted to try and push myself more to try and, still try and make a life of having dyspraxia. So, but yeah, I'll talk about in a few slides' time some things that had gone on that, again, I should hope that no one has to go through, really. So I'm just going to say it now for any listeners, I suppose, and you guys, that there might be some trigger warnings coming up just because of it being a bit sensitive at times. That's all.
That's fine.
Before
we go into that, Jordan.
Yes.
It's a bit of a crazy question, but it's something that I was listening to the High Performance podcast this week again, as always, and something they were talking about is how you can reframe your mind to basically essentially see every situation in some kind of positive light, which I know sounds mad, but my question is, based off that, was there any side to having the dyspraxia that you felt actually, now you look back, there was a positive? It gave you maybe a different outlook, a different way of seeing things that you without dyspraxia you might not have been able to see. For example, when you told me about the times you've helped people, do you think that the help you've been given due to your circumstances has almost shaped you to give help to other people, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both, but I think as well is that it's when you're in that sort of position, it can feel quite an isolating experience as well. So you want to ensure that others don't go through that same path.
Right.
So it's a bit of both, really. But I think, again, which we'll speak about schooling in a minute, but there was some people that really understood it, but there was other people that didn't understand it. So it was that split, I suppose, break even, where you was even fighting the education system at the time that with the teachers, that my mum had numerous meetings with the school to try and get somewhere to get me more help that I needed, which I suppose when you look at it now, I hope it has got better. I mean, Cal, you may be able to have an insight on that as well, but I think it's just, I still feel that there's still times that we're still behind with times with additional needs, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I hope that answers your question, mate.
So I got a question as well. Like, so did you actually, when obviously, like, you started to realize that your the like motor skills and obviously like not being able to do certain things that other people could do that's looked so easy and so simple, like, did you know that you had dyspraxia then, or like, and how did you kind of what was the things that was easiest for you? Did you have a good understanding of what was happening?
No, I didn't, purely because I saw my peers do things that I was thinking, I wish I could do that. And I was back to that question of, well, why can't I do that?
Yeah.
And again, that made me, I suppose, because at that age, especially when you're in infant school, no one has I suppose no one, what I mean is, like, peers of your own age don't understand if you have I suppose, an impairment or something. They expect you all to be the same when you're at that age.
Yeah.
Teachers might have a better understanding, but the students don't. So it got to points where there was times in schooling where, just like others were laughing at me, I suppose, taking the pee behind my back and saying, well, we can do it, you can't. And that again made me feel like a real loner.
I've witnessed that a lot, especially with like like children who have got ADHD, or children that are on the spectrum of being autistic. It's that constant, like, that attitude towards a specific additional learning need, where it's like there's a massive lack of understanding. And the thing is as well is like, you know, if you actually have a look at the curriculum and everything, like they need to teach a lot more in relation to that, you know, like ALN, a lot of additional learning needs and the actual understanding of autism, ADHD, all these different additional learning needs, it goes under the radar. And I think the self-awareness needs to become a lot more, because it's like, you know, I mean, you've literally got, like, for example, a child that is in a mainstream classroom who would be stimming, so it'd be like flapping arms or something, and you know, it's resulting in bullying. It's resulting in things where it's like, you know, like you're kind of laughing at them, like you said, like looking at them in a different way, thinking they're weird, all these kind of name callings and stuff, where it's like, actually, if you had a more of an understanding of why they do those things and why they're acting like that, it would kind of change that perspective, and it would change that perception on things. And it's
Absolutely.
like, yeah, and everyone just kind of looks at, like, and that's where, again, that's where I think, you know, society and that social implication, the social stereotype, and all these different things. And it's like, you know, there needs to be a lot more self-awareness in relation to those sort of things, because they're really important. And and the thing is like, you know, education is so important, but it's also not just teaching you for how you are throughout the years of school, but it's teaching you for later life, you know, and how you can be a member of society, and how you can go out into a social setting and be able to, you know, not just work, but communicate with other people, be able to, like, you know, actually be a respectful member of society. And the thing is, if you have a lack of understanding of specific additional learning needs like dyspraxia, like autism, you're not going to you're not going to kind of understand why people act a certain way. And
I
it's
think
like,
this is it though, Cal. The thing is with that is there's people, when my mum had that with the school, there was primary school, which we'll go on to in a short while, but there was teachers that said, well, I know what autism is, I know what dyslexia is, but I don't know what dyspraxia is. And mum was like, well, surely if you really don't know, have some education about it. Like, you know, try and get some training in about it, because it needs to be made more awareness of, you know. That's what she's told me since, and I feel like, well, blimey, that really opened my eyes, thinking, Jesus, like there's a lot of things that still need to be worked on, really, you know.
Yeah, and that's where the saying comes, where it's like, you know, not all disabilities and not all additional learning needs are visible.
Yeah, absolutely,
You know,
mate.
I mean,
Absolutely.
it's literally like, you go and see a kid. If you see a kid or you see someone that's in a wheelchair, you know that obviously, like, they have some physical disability. But if someone's got dyspraxia or something that's a lot more in relation to the and if someone's you know, got some kind of, it's more so in relation to the brain, you know, or the inner body, you're not going to be able to see it.
No, absolutely not.
And that's where that kind of lack of understanding and that lack of education comes in. You know,
Absolutely.
I mean, I've worked in the industry now for what, nearly 3 years, you know, and like, again, I didn't necessarily have a clue what dyspraxia was. I didn't have a clue what dyslexia was. You know, these are things that I didn't really understand, but you know, it's up to the practitioner, and it's up to the actual person who are dealing with these kids to be able to educate themselves on this, so they're better to be able to actually help these children.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. But I appreciate your honesty as well, mate. But it's like, you know, I think, yeah. I'll talk to you guys in a second, actually, with that. Can you go on to the next slide, please, Luca? So I know it's dogs, soppy post, but with Charlie for Border Collie there, second picture in, he was my dog that I grew up with all the time when I was younger. He was literally my companion. He knew if I had a shit day at school, he would feel it. He would be there by my side as soon as I got in that day. and he really understood it. He always used to put his head on my lap, or he always used to, you know, get really nervous if I was nervous. So dogs were very susceptible to emotion, and they've been a big part of my life, really. And it just goes to show how amazing animals are, doesn't it, gents? Really. Next slide, please, Luca. So yeah, as we say, with the delayed development and that reception, with one story that had gone on there, because I couldn't run properly, because I couldn't move, obviously coordinate my body and that, with this lad called Luke that was in my year, he said, "Come on, chase me." I shouldn't have chased him, because literally I did. I was thinking, "Oh, I could do it, I could do it." And then next thing I knew, because of my clumsiness, I tripped on the back of his heel and he went flying. And then I got blamed from it from the teacher, because they said, "Oh, Jordan, why did you do that for?" You know, and it's like, well, looking around, and I was obviously shaken. Year one, I had the teacher, like I say, that did understand, and she was fantastic. I mean, it got to a stage where I couldn't do ties or whatever. You rely on, because you had elastic ties then, actually, it wasn't so bad. But she always got in for sense to me then of, "Jordan, you're going to need to maybe use a tie later in life. Let's try and teach you now. Like, let's keep, if you wanting and you don't want to face the wrath of going out into the playground, being by yourself in the end, come and stay with us at lunchtime and I'll teach you how to do a tie." You know, and I think that was a really good um that was really good teacher, because she understood, and she knew how I felt about things. There was things that really, she had like a sixth sense, I suppose. So she's receptive. Year two, can't remember, but year three, as I say, West Ham, and me being a Spurs fan, teacher and I used to have banter all the time. That made the year go better, because we had that relationship. But for sports day, again, everyone was being put forward for sports day what events they should do. But because I couldn't coordinate some things then, I was always left out. So they didn't put me in for anything. Year four, I had to have speech and language support, because then my speech got a bit funny, which can come in with dyspraxia as it goes. But because this is a funny thing though, because the teacher's name was Mrs. McGuana, I actually used to pronounce it Mrs. Marijuana. So there you are, gents. Maybe that lesson that I should do more work on my pronunciation. Year five, as I say, another supportive teacher, fantastic. Couldn't fault her one bit. Every time that I used to go into school, she always used to say, "Hello, Jordan." Used to come up to me for a minute, just saying, "How are you this morning? Is everything okay? If you feel upset, just say, you know, and that's fine. We'll have a chat when we can." Or it got to, um, it was just all different things. Like she used to say to me, because I again was still going around all these years by myself in the playground when I was outside, that no one wanted to mingle with me, because I was like, everyone thought I was being a teacher's pet, but it wasn't intentional. But she always used to get someone different, if you like, each week to hang around with me in the playground from the class. So it gave me a chance to build a relationship with other students in the classroom. And I thought that was a really good way of doing it. And to be fair, there was a few students that I don't really want to do that, like, because you can have a voice of your opinion at that age, I suppose. But in the end, she actually forced them to do it in a sense, because she said it won't be as bad as you make it out to be, and you might feel better after it because you've helped somebody out. And actually, a lot of them come back after, and then it was like I was all of a sudden Mr. Popular, because everyone was like, "Oh, I want to do it this week. I want to do it this week," you know. And I felt really fortunate, actually. But this is where the trigger warning comes in. That year six was the hardest education year in my entire life. I remember first day, well, before first day, when going to your induction, there was three teachers, and one of them was a New Zealand fella. And I always used to hear him shout when a student was messing about or whatever from my year five class. And I always used to, I suppose, shit it really, because I was thinking, for next year, I hope it's not him. But it turned out it was him. And I didn't like at that age being, obviously, I didn't like being criticised, but I also didn't like, loud shouting, I suppose, or anything like that, because it always overwhelmed me. And I remember first day, and he straight away took I say a dislike but he took a picking, and he used that opportunity just to make my life hell throughout that year. So there was one time where I'd done a piece of art. Well, I say I'd done a piece of artwork. I couldn't do a piece of art homework because of the pencil and coordination element. But my mum wrote in a letter saying, been up trying to do all this. Mum tried to guide my hand and everything like that. He looked at that letter. He started to read it out in front of the class, and he said, Jordan's pulling mummy by the apron strings again, everybody. And literally, that made me feel like shit straight away. He scrunched up the piece of paper and threw it in the bin behind him. That was one episode. Second time, I was doing my times tables, doing my spelling every week with the class. Everyone else got praise when it came to that they got really good mark in their spelling or their times tables. I always used to be fanatical about numbers, but I always used to say get at least 28 out of 30, say for times tables or whatever. I was over the moon, but everyone got praised. I didn't get anything. And I actually said at one point, I said, where's my praise? Like, I want a bit of, They said, you don't deserve it. And that was it. And it just felt like there was, because you get reward points as well at that age, like house points, or whatever you call them these days. Everyone else got a house point, but again, me, nothing. And it made me feel like crap. I just felt like, I just felt overwhelmed. There was a student in my class that had dyslexia. It was all over him, did anything above for him. And I'm not saying it in a horrible way, but he did anything above for him. But as soon as it comes to my needs, absolutely zilch. Another time, it was to do with PE. It was rounders. I don't know if I might have said this on your podcast, Luca, but did rounders. And the ball was coming to me. I went to catch it, but instead of going like that, I'd gone like that, and it just gone past my hand, obviously because of the lack of coordination. And he went, wow, everyone, Jordan can really catch a ball, can't he? Ha! And he started laughing. And he got everyone else in for class starting laughing with him. And again, it made me feel like crap. I felt like in the end, it was getting to a stage that I was making up to my mum. I didn't want to go to school because I didn't want to be anywhere near that teacher. And it got to a point where mum was pinning down and saying, is it because of a student bullying you? And I just said, I was silent in the end. And it came to that it was towards the end of the year where I had another episode when I was in school that I got up from my seat because I thought I did really well in my work. And he made me feel like crap again, like saying, oh, it's not anything special or anything like that. That took me, goodness knows how long. And I ran out from the classroom, went downstairs, and because we had a swimming pool with him for school, to be fair, I don't know what would have happened, but I went by the swimming pool and literally there was no one else in it. And I just put my head in water head first. And literally the swimming instructor was there just cleaning around, and she got me out of the pool shaking me. Jordan, what are you doing? And to be fair, I still can't even answer to this day what was going through my head then to do that. But I just felt like I wanted to drown out all of the issues,
Just a couple of points there, George. Obviously, and I want to add a little bit of coaching context into this, especially when from sort of Phil's angle and thinking of bringing this in from a contemporary sort of context as well, right? So if Phil was to land a comment with one of his young players right now, and it was perhaps a negative comment the same way you've had that from your year 6 teacher, right? That can have a lasting effect. So obviously you're in your 20s now. This was back when you're 10 and 11. So this is still lingered on for 10 to 15 plus years, right? And you're still looking back, you're still reflecting upon it, and you can hear the emotion, you can hear the effect that you've had from that younger age group. And even though a lot has happened in your life, both positive and negative, and some situations perhaps more negative and a lot more positive, right? You still hold a sort of torch to this whereby it doesn't sit right with you, and so it shouldn't as well. And it can be very easy for us to say, yeah, you can move on past that. A lot has happened, and you look at this. But from a coaching context, if Phil was to land that with a player that he had, then they would still take that away later on in their life, like you have. And I think that's the importance of understanding the individual, the right context, the right environment, making sure you're adapting and being within your sessions. And it's about how you build that relationship to have that long-lasting effect, which is really positive. And if you want to jump in there, Phil, on the back of that, and then Jordan, I'm going to pick up a bit of another part of that question, if you don't mind. But Phil, when it comes to it, I think it's about that long-term relationship and how you can have an effect on a young person, which can be long-lasting. But how do you ensure that you're inclusive? How you bring a positive environment for your players when they're within your sort of capacity?
I mean, it's all contextual, I suppose, isn't it? Because like Jordan's essentially alluded to, it's understanding the needs of the individual, and sometimes we talk about that in context of the classic. Some players like to be shouted at, some need to have their arm around them in that way, because that's the typical sort of football way we talk about it. But actually, there is that other side in terms of the needs of the players. Now, obviously, a lot of what I do is sort of open age football where it's not so much like pan disability and things like that. But I have seen clubs, and there's one local lad near us, who lives not too far away from me in the Birmingham area, called Connor Sherry, and he's a really lovely lad. He played for the Aston Villa disability side. And the first time I actually met him, and again, this is where I'm guilty as anyone. I didn't realise he had a disability. He just seemed like a normal lad, until I got to know him. I had no idea. And I was playing a charity game against some Aston Villa legends, actually, down at Redditch United, a local club. And I played for the non-legends team. And after the game, he was stood just right outside the changing room, like the changing room sort of bit. I came out, I sort of bumped into him. Oh, sorry, mate. He was like, oh, sorry, can I get your... And straight I was thinking, why does he want my autograph? And obviously I did it. I was like, I wasn't going to say no to someone. I was thrilled. I felt like James Bond. So this is amazing. This is... I couldn't get over it. I was telling my girlfriend, my mum, everyone that would listen. I've been signing autographs, so I've made it. But then I saw him later on in the bar, and that's how I got to know him a bit. And he explained about his disability and stuff. And then the cogs started to go in my head that I realised straight away that he didn't differentiate me from someone who's a European. and I thought that was actually a special positive side to it. And I've been following him through social media. I followed him on Twitter, on Facebook, all the things. He's an adult. It's all, of course, I've got my DBS and everything, so it's fine. All above board. He's a Villa fan as well, which is great because obviously I can bond over that with him. Sometimes I'll just put a comment on there and try to interact with him. But he opened my eyes up so much to how much there is more to people, and there are things like dyslexia and stuff that you take for granted. Dyslexia will affect. There are some players with incredible footballing ability that have dyslexia, and that can hold them back within a football session. If you're saying silly things like get yourself into 2s and 3s, or it could be anything, it could be colours, anything like that. And it wasn't until I met Connor, this individual, that it made me realise it. And the way that I try my best is that I always try to look out for the individuals. And the best way, quite simply for me, is getting to know them. I'm not, there could be 2 or 3, 4 sessions before I start to catch on that actually, hold on, there's more to this person than I'm realising. And, there's a couple of lads that play for me. One that I spoke about before, I think the last podcast we did, when you asked me about our greatest memory in sort of the last year. I don't know if you remember the question, Luca. And the lad that I spoke about that texted me, he's actually got dyslexia. I never knew that for like the first 4 or 5 weeks I was coaching him. So after that now, I always make sure that after I've said everything to the group, I put a quick arm around him and say, everything all right? Do you need me to explain anything again? And the reason I do it away from the group is exactly what Jordan spoke about when he talked about his letter from his mum being read out, is that I don't want him to feel marginalised or getting picked on for that reason. And that's within an open age male football team. So I may have gone around the long way there, but I just wanted to give context to my sort of the way I see things now, thanks to Connor and meeting Connor Sherry, because he's a great lad. And actually, what I love about him, he's actually started his own disability team, which I think is brilliant. And
that's excellent.
Over the moon for him. Yeah, I think it's brilliant. And I'm going to be going down to watch them as much as I can when I get a chance and stuff. But yeah, to answer the question in sort of overall, it's all about getting to know the individual. It's all about being patient as well, because you have to be patient with everyone. Give them time, give them chance. And then it's working out the difference between what is someone's personality, what is someone's needs, and then the other side of it is there any sort of vindictiveness about their actions? Because I think that can be such a blurry line. People can think that someone's acting a certain way because of they just don't like you or anything like that, when actually it could be something as simple as they have a learning disability or anything, that they're not meaning to do it. And the minute you understand, which is what Callum was talking about, the minute that you have that little bit of education, or you just spend that little bit of time to get to know the person, understand their needs, suddenly the next time they're doing the exact same thing, you actually go, doing that on purpose. It's completely innocent, and we have to support and work around that.
And I think that's very important, because not only within that, you've talked about the impact that you have, the long-lasting relationship, and how that sort of young or individual looked at you within that context and that time as well. So they see you as a positive role model. You've been able to build that positive relationship as well. You've had an impact upon their personal life as well as within that moment, and how you brought those that it's also reframing as well, and how you've brought that back into play. So like I've highlighted is that this podcast is within this context. Now that we're having this discussion, so much learning is actually taking place, and for everyone that I always have a perspective of those listening, is that I hope they have a learning element behind it, and it's just linking that background, because you've reframed that situation and added context, and how that's built upon how you work with those individuals, how you can ask questions, and how perhaps a coach who is in that environment, or a teacher or a youth worker or whoever, right, they perhaps have a young person or an individual where they don't understand their needs, and it's just actually, right, how many minutes can I allocate, what kind of questions can I have, and then can I open up and build that relationship just by understanding them. So if they got a disability and they're not forthcoming, then perhaps we can understand them just a little bit, and then we can observe them over the course of the session and build that relationship from there, which is I think is really important. But it's just to link that background to a learning perspective, and also highlight a bit of a coaching context within that. But Jord, it fits in nicely, because building on the back of what Phil just said there, and it also relates to the second part of the question I wanted to ask you. So it's actually corresponded quite nicely, right? But for that teacher who is sort of led a traumatic experience there that lives on with you, have you ever thought about going back and addressing that with him, or having maybe, a bit of a restorative session around it, or just any type of, communication or contact, and highlighting that with him?
Good question. I feel now that I would be in a better place to address it. Yes, because I feel that it'd be good to clear the air. I mean, there used to be one work setting he turned up to, though, which was to do with an induction day, because I used to work at a school. But he actually come up to me a few times then. But again, he was playing for game of, and he said in these words, "What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong?" But in a sense of, I did nothing wrong, And he was so bullish about that. And I said, "Look, I don't want to even talk to you right now, and I shouldn't really, while I'm focusing on doing this session, if you like. I don't really want to even be interrupted about that." But it's got to a stage where now that I feel that I could hold my own a bit more. Yes, I would like to show to him that I have overcome things, I suppose. And I don't mean saying that in a big-headed way. I'm just saying that I just want to prove a point to him, that because he used to give me these remarks of all the time when I was younger. "You're a failure. You will be a failure in the future. You've got no hope in the future." All them. He used to make them little jibes every now and again when I was in the classroom, and that was all because I couldn't do something as simple as, yeah, I suppose my shoelaces.
But I think that's quite interesting you say that, though, because a lot of that sort of behavior is usually projected by someone because of their own insecurities. Like if you actually have a look at like subconscious mind and like different theoretical psychoanalytic theories, a lot of it is actually in relation to insecure projection. So it's like, you know, like obviously it's classified as unprofessional. Like, you know, I mean, me and Luca, we work in the education industry. If we did something like that, it would be a sackable offense. You know, you don't. And the thing is like, you know, I just feel like the way that that teacher went about things was just vile and disgusting. And the question I want to ask you in relation to that is, did you ever feel like you needed to kind of go and tell someone? Like, you know, when did you ever feel like at the time that it was like, did you want to, like you mentioned about all the other teachers that you felt like you had a very good relationship with, like was there any kind of feeling where you just wanted to go to them and kind of tell them what was going on and tell them how this teacher was making you feel at that time?
I didn't know, because I felt that if I felt scared at the time that if I opened my mouth in how I felt that I could have been on for consequences of that. Because I remember there was one time which leads in with that year 5 teacher where I remember I gone in one day. He said, "Oh, Jordan, your year 5 teacher wants to see you." And I went, "Oh, right." And it was like I thought, okay, that's quite good. But he said, "Don't be too long." And I thought, "Oh, well, he's changed his tune, like, you know." Anyway, what happened is she knew that I was a Spurs fan, and it was Spurs' 125th year anniversary against Aston Villa for 4-4 draw. And she went to that game, and she got me like a one of the special flags from that year, from that game. And I thought that's a really nice touch. And obviously, I was really over the moon with it. I said, "Oh, like, thanks so much," and everything like that, you know. And it really made my day. But as soon as I'd gone back into that class, well, I say as soon as I'd gone back to that classroom, I was walking back to that classroom, and he come out from his room and he said, "What you got there then?" I went, and I just showed him like flag, and he went, "Well, you know, put it away in your locker." And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to." And he said, "Put it away in your locker now, otherwise I'll snap it in half." You know, and I was like, you know, and that really unsettled me again, because I thought, like, well, 1 minute ago you was just being okay, like welcoming me into class again, and now you've just turned tact again. So it was like it was a bit of jealousy, maybe, I don't know. But it got to that, it came to the end of the day, and he said, "Hurry up at my sight, get that flag out of my sight, and if you're here any longer, then I will snap it in half, and I'll guarantee it to you, and you won't have it any longer. And it's unfair that you're getting one, none of the other students are getting anything."
So did this start on the first day that you went into his classroom?
Yeah.
Like, so do you feel like that do you feel like the way that he was treating you was not only in relation to bullying, but do you feel like you were discriminated against?
Yes. Yes, I do. And in all fairness, it was ridiculous, because my mum even had meetings with the school, and for school, I suppose they would, but they protected him, right? She has told me that she had a meeting with the teacher and the head, and the head said while mum was there with the teacher, "Okay, I'll go and monitor it." Of course, when she'd gone to monitor it for a day, he was nice as pie to me then. But as soon as that day was over, God Almighty, he changed again. And then it got to the stage where she reported back to my mum saying, "Jordan's making it up." So she was protecting that teacher. And in the end, mum really felt that she wanted to get me out of there, but she didn't know how to.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't any good for my safeguarding and welfare, really. But yes, I do feel now, understanding more about things, yes, I do feel like I was discriminated against her.
Just to kind of bring this back to, or link it into, should I say, you know, this can happen in. I've seen it happen personally. I've played for a few clubs over the years, been lucky enough to. but I've seen players in dressing rooms when the face doesn't fit, bullying, marginalising, making them train on their own, hammering them all the time, scapegoating, good word. And if just listening to the conversation, especially with sort of Callum with his background, obviously bouncing off you, George, the person who was in the situation, it's just straight away my mind's going back to their memories of never really happened to me much. Maybe one team I had it a little bit, but there was a few of us, so it didn't feel as bad, if that makes sense. There was about 4 or 5 of us at the time that clearly wanted to get rid of us, but didn't know how to do it. He thought by bullying us into submission, we just leave on our own accord, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It almost feels like that. It almost feels like for whatever reason, didn't like you and just wanted you to kind of walk to save him. Obviously, I'm assuming he knew about the dyspraxia, and it almost feels like to me that he didn't. He wanted to get rid of you, but realised he can't do it because it'd be even worse if you having dyspraxia. How it would look to his image. And it's just horrible to hear that, man. I'm really sorry that you went through it. Really am.
Yeah. Cheers, Phil. I think I don't know. It got to my grinding gears that I suppose when I say got older, over for years, I've always felt that I hope that no other students had to go through that brunt. Because if that has happened, I just hope there's been part of me that's wanting to feel like has raising awareness somehow. I don't know how, but has anyone else had to face that? Not even with that teacher, but just generally, to get a consensus of how many people struggle with that, really, because there's a few friends that I've even spoken to, and they've said to me that they used to get bullied by their teacher. And this teacher that I had, actually, one of my very good friends, actually, that I've been friends with since actually year 1, I'm still in contact with him now. And he said, I've had time to reflect because I saw that day in, day out for you when you was there. And he said, I wish I know I'm young then, but he said, I wish I protected you more. And again, that blew my mind, really.
That's really interesting perspective of things comes in, because obviously, I remember when I was school, I was in school, I got bullied by a maths teacher, and because he thought it'd be funny to kind of take the mick out of me to kind of get that popularity in relation to the more popular side of kids. But I think obviously at the time, it kind of lowers your self-esteem, and it just makes you feel really bad about yourself. It makes you feel like, the people that, you see there that are practitioners who are, they're there for a job. It makes you feel like, you can't really trust anyone, no. These people are supposed to be there to care for you and provide you with that emotional security, that stability in a school, in an education setting. But I think, as I've got into the education industry myself, I in a way I look back on it and kind of think it's that kind of perspective where it's actually being that's not how you treat a child, or that's not how you treat someone, and you kind of look at it in you can go either two ways. And I think obviously with you guys, and the way you approach the way you approach coaching or just anything of the sort, you kind of know the best way to be able to treat people and actually want to take an interest in their personal life so that you can actually help them and build that trusting relationship, like Phil and Luca said. Then you kind of use it as you use it as that motivation where it's this is how you treated me, this is how you saw me, this is how you were with me, and it's I'm gonna prove you wrong type thing. It's that level of that consciousness where it gives you a different mindset going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was the thing. It drained me because I thought, well, if it's like this, well, not that you think in this way, but I was thinking, looking on it now, how I understood it then.
Yeah.
Is I'm starting big school next year. Is it going to be any better? But if we go on to the next slide, Luca, it was a completely different thing. So with Hormead, they were absolutely phenomenal. Such a difference. For year 7, don't get me wrong, I was still recovering from that, if you like, from the year before. I had a situation where my form tutor, she was one of them that used to shout, but she used to shout for just for banter, if you like. So when we was waiting for class, she always used to shout, "Class, come in!" but in a really loud voice, to, I suppose, yeah, laugh, but also maybe put frighteners up, yeah, just to wind you up, if you know what I mean. But there was a few times when that happened and she started to understand me, if you like. She always used to pull me to one side a few times and say, "So sorry, I forgot. You don't like shouting, you know?" And I said, "Well, it's all right, fine, but at least she acknowledged it, you know what I mean?" So that was year 7, but I had this stage where I was going through that again, no one wanted to know me, so I was left by myself. It got to year 8 that I was feeling the same, and it was getting only towards halfway through the year that I was actually starting to find my feet, if you like. Excuse me, sorry. But with that in mind, that's when some health problems started. So I went for a bike ride, and this is again male awareness, I suppose. But I gone for this, ride on my bike, and I remember the next day, literally down below in the men's testicle region, I was in agony. I don't know what had happened, but something had gone on. And in all fairness, it really frightened me because I thought, again, how do I explain this to someone? And it only comes to my mum, where I said, "Mum, something's not right." And she said, "Is it because you like?" She thought at the time, "Is it because you don't want to go to school again? Is it getting too much for you?" And I said, "Mum, I understand what you're saying in that sense, but it wasn't." And I said, "It's actually health, but I don't know how to explain it." Anyway, I went to see a doctor. Um, well, I went to see my GP. Sorry, he referred me up to the hospital. At that age, I saw a consultant at the hospital, and he said to me there and then, bearing in mind I was only 12, "You've got cancer." And that again shit me up like, huh? And I knew what cancer was then, but I was thinking for worse. I was thinking, shit, I've got cancer. Am I going to live? How long have I got? All them sort of things, you know what I mean? And it was like sort of a very numb feeling. So I was left in agony down there. And it came to that I saw my GP again, and he said, "I've seen your scan results, and whoever said that to you should, be done really, because he said you've not got cancer, but it's markers of cancer, so you need to keep an eye on it over the years. So we're going to have to check you regularly every single year just to make sure that it doesn't develop to that." Okay, so I said, "Yeah, fine. Okay, fine, whatever." But because I was in so much pain down there, I had to wear joggers to school. I had to carry pillows to school. And you know what happened again? Peers got on me again, didn't they? They said, "How comes you can wear joggers? How comes you can carry a pillow around? You're getting preferred treatment. You're a teacher's pet." And I was like, and it really sort of brought me back down again. And in the end, but for school, because they overheard it, they nipped it in the bud as quickly as they could. And they said, "It's nothing to do with you." I'm saying a made up name here, but it's nothing to do with you, Joseph. It's Jordan's own personal business, his own health issues. You don't need to ask no more. And because they kept chipping away, she said, "Okay, if you're going to keep on being like that to Jordan, then I'm going to send you to detention. And if you still keep on, then I'm going to put it forward that you're going to be excluded from school for a while because you're not intruding on someone's own personal, space." And again, bearing in mind that was 2 years after the year 6 incident. What a difference from that teacher to in year 8 to that teacher in year 6. And it made me feel like I could actually breathe. I felt like, oh, someone's finally accepted me, you know. And then, even though I was going around that, if you like, all in that pain, I went yearly for checks, and thankfully it wasn't, but it was still markers for cancer. But I was getting on with my schooling, if you like, and again, for teachers or tutors, tried to integrate me with students and say, hang around with such and such today, it might do you good, and if it doesn't, well, you tried, you know. So that was year 8. Year 9, then I joined a club called SHOTS. So SHOTS stands for Schools Helping Out Towards Success. So with that, it was a group again for, I suppose, students that had a disability. So dyspraxia, autism, even for people, they actually made it for people that was actually lacking confidence. You know, students that are lacking confidence. And they said, this is a group now that you will do, say, I don't know, board games during this lunchtime, or we'll do, we'll go out and we'll play rounders, or we'll go out and play football, or we'll go out and do something during this lunchtime so you can all mingle. And I thought that was a really good thing that they brought in. And that changed, I suppose that changed my schooling life better, because I was being able to meet with other peers. And they come from all different years, from years 7 to 11, but it was well in check. And for good thing about this as well, it wasn't really tutors that run it as such. It was actual teaching assistants that run it. And I think, again, that was fantastic, because with them, I feel that teaching assistants, they're fantastic at what they do, but I don't think they don't get enough credit for what they do, if you know what I mean. So to do that in their own lunch break as well, when they could just do their own thing, have their own lunch, and then go back into lessons in the afternoon, they made that a thing every single day of the week while I was in school. And to this day, that club is still going. Though there's been a turnover in staff, it's still going. So it's continued within the legacy of the school, which is good. Year 10 and 11, I've gone through GCSEs and I was dreading them because I did absolutely awful in my SATs exams. But I had a brilliant teacher in English. Maths was okay. Not fantastic though. So I can understand, Cal, what you're saying about with maths teacher and that.
Yeah.
But my English teacher was absolutely phenomenal. And to be fair, again, at the time, he was a deputy head of the school. So yes, he had a strict demeanour, but my God, as a teacher, he was another level. He brought a confidence out in you that you didn't feel that you could get from anywhere else, I suppose, at the time. Because I did a GCSE English exam, mock exam, sorry, at the start of year 10. And he said to me, just do your best. That's all you can do. And he said, even if you get a U, like an ungraded, fine. We learn, we move forwards. We'll get you where you need to be. And he said, I'm really hoping, Buffy, when you do your year 11 exam, we'll get you a C grade. So in the end, it came about that all the lessons, that they were well structured. If like, he was making it at a pace that was the right pace for me. Even though there's other students there, if you like, that I was like, God, this is dragging on a bit. But he did that for me, and I'll always be grateful for. But there was a teaching assistant that she also used to, where we had I don't know if you guys had this opportunity at school, but it was something called option support. So if you didn't want to do, say, a technology topic out of graphics, design technology, textiles, and food tech, you had an opportunity to do option support, is where you could go in a quiet space for an hour and do extra revision for your exams or whatever. And I took that up, actually. But the teaching assistant was there and she helped me with my English and we did more work. Short straw of it is, with my English, when it came to the exam, that teacher came back from his holiday early to be there for results day, just to see me open my paper to see what I got for results of. And I opened it and I burst into tears because I got a C grade. And he said, from that first day, if you get a U, it's fine. We'll learn from it, but we'll still get you a C. So I'll always be forever grateful to him. For maths situation, however, numbers, fine. But when you're doing an exam, you might say to me, guys, that, okay, I can see why they might do it. But I don't understand why in maths, for an exam, you have to learn about Pythagoras' theorem for. When are you going to need that in life, realistically, in a sense? When are you going to need maybe a circumference of a circle, maybe in a football field if you're doing pitch layouts? But all these different things, you think, hold on a second. And actually, it always used to be where the exam, unfortunately, the exam levels were going up then as well. They were being raised. So I thought every time that I did well, my marks were brought down and it was still a D. So if you needed, say, 70 for a pass out of 100, it gone up to 75. But I always missed out by them extra couple of marks because of them certain areas, or to draw, the circumference of a circle of whatever, And it's because I physically couldn't do it. And the teachers understood that, but again, it was bringing me down where I was thinking, I've worked my ass off in this, trying to do the best I can, and here we are that I'm getting downgraded again because I can't do a circumference of a bleeding circle, And that's where I think exams, yes, they are important, don't get me wrong, but there's some things in there that I feel that I'm going to say maybe you guys as teachers might feel differently, but I think some things are a bit outdated in that respect for when you need it in life.
I don't think that exams should be. I think exams should be scrapped. And the reason for that is because I have seen how well people achieve and how amazing kids work throughout the whole year, like throughout whole school life, and it's like I feel like rather than exams, it should be coursework. Because I feel as if, why should your whole school year, the whole school years of your life, all come down to that moment you go into an exam hall? You have people that may struggle to remember things. You have people that may struggle to do certain things. But, if you're being graded throughout the, rather than a GCSE, right, and everything comes down to that last exam, and you could end, and you've put all the hard work in throughout your whole school. You've tried so hard with every single thing, but then it's like you go into that exam hall and you might forget something, or the pressure might get to you, or anything like that, and you just not get the grade that you actually know that you're capable of getting.
Yeah,
I just feel like that's what I feel is in relation to why coursework is just so important. It's like, I have seen people who have struggled so much in school, whether it's through a disability or whether it's through a lack of self-belief, a lack of self-confidence. These people then go to college, and you're having teachers as well that are basically saying that you're not going to amount to anything, or and then that's massive self-doubt creeps in, and it's like you end up seeing these kids that didn't do well in their exams. They've gone on to college and they've got an ace their coursework. They've they've gone and done like BTECs or whatever it is, and they have come out with A stars. They've come out with Bs, like massive grades, and then they've gone on to university and they've literally come out with like 2 1s or even a 1, or any possible kind of top grade that you can get. It's because of the fact that it's been graded through a coursework, rather than at the end of it. Because look, not everybody is academic. But
to be fair, what you've said there, Cal, though, that is something that English teacher that I had at GCSE, I call him Dan because I got to know him when I'd gone back to work at school for that period of time.
Yeah.
And he actually got into me as well, that mindset of, and he used to say, on the day of an exam, you might feel relaxed now, but when it comes to an exam, you're going to be nervous. I know you will be, he said, Jordan, but he said, try not to panic. it is what it is. Unfortunately, it might be for day of the exam, and actually you've got a stomach ache, but it could be because you've got a stomach ache because you're so nervous because your life depends on it, and everyone's making it out to be. And again, that put me in a different frame of mind. And that's what I say, for him to be a deputy head. He was a very refreshing deputy head because he had a different approach to his education, how he felt education should be like,
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, and I think, like, especially now in this day and age, and obviously, like, from your time when well, from all our time when we were in school, there's so much more pressure now.
Yeah.
Like, the pressure is so much more intensified than it was when all of us were in school, and but obviously, like, Luca, you can agree with that, like, with the way that the actual, like, how much pressure it goes on in schools these days.
Absolutely, there's huge pressure, and there's a few points that I wanted to come back to relating around this. My first one was being an educator myself, and when you started talking about circumference and Pythagoras theory, when you said a typical student statement is, why do you need this? I was getting ready to pounce on you as an educator with an answer in response to that, mate. But I think it combines with what Cal says there and what you say, because it is an important perspective, and it's important, I think, as well. I'm a big visionary for the future of education, and some would see me as perhaps a very right-winged or even lefty, depending on how they want to say it, right? Because my vision is very different to what the education system is now, but yet I work within it. And what my vision is very different and opposes the academic side to it. It opposes how many people view education. And I'm like, I actually don't want education to be the way it currently is. So one of the reforms that we've tried to go through here in Wales is rejigging our school holidays, a bit like England, and looking at as to whether students should be back in August and shortened holidays over that summer period. Whereas I actually think they should be extended, and we should be looking at more alternative curriculum, alternative education, the sports side, the play, all of this over summer, right? But to come back to that point on that, and building upon that exam period as well, I'm also not an advocate of exams, and I don't think there's a big purpose behind it. I'm someone who still sits exams myself as someone studying part-time for a uni degree alongside teaching as well, right? And when it comes to exams for me, I'm like, you know what does this actually prove? It means when I go and apply for a job in a few years' time, or I'm actually teaching, oh yeah, I've done an exam. Okay, what does that actually contribute? Okay, I can show analysis skills, I can show that I can perform under pressure, how I prepare myself, and all these sort of intricacies. But someone opposite the table, are they actually going to be thinking about, oh, he sat an exam a few years ago on this module? No, they're going to be looking at the experience, how I present myself, the skills that I have, and what I'm able to bring to the organization and develop that over a period of time. Then there might be someone else interviewing for that job, and they might be, say, more educated, more experienced, perhaps a better teacher, but yet they've not sat a single exam because it's all been coursework competency. They built up a load of experience and developed skills even further because of the context and environments that they have been in. So I think there's definitely a discussion around how education looks at that point, and there's a big conversation around it. And I'm loving where this sort of episode is going, because this is overlapping in terms of the education series, which I'm going to be releasing in a few weeks, and it really highlights a lot of the contemporary topics within this. And it's almost as if this episode is sort of sidetracked massively from what you wanted to talk about, George, and opening up a different discussion and sort of platform. But I think it's bringing out your story in a real context and really framing this whereby there is so much more which is really unlocked in this. So whereas you go into schools and present this, we've actually really explored and exploded so many different types of conversation, so many thoughts within this sort of episode as well.
Right. So, yeah. Next slide, please, Luca. So, yeah, Haven Sixth Form. Again, new lease of life. You see for grades there, gents, anyway. But it was a chance that I was able to absolutely flourish with, actually. It was a different approach again. I remember my first day of Sixth Form college, my tutor, Lisa, and I was the first one there. Sat down, and she said to me, right, Jordan, I can tell you're nervous. You're literally like shaking, before anyone else turned up. And I said, yeah, I'm really nervous, bigger environment again. And she said, it'd be absolutely fine. But if I keep you seated here, right by the front door, if you feel that it gets overwhelming at any point, and because I'm your tutor for your tourism and I'm your personal tutor, if it ever gets overwhelming, just walk out that door and come back when you feel ready. Now, again, for me, that was a great way of finding my feet, I suppose, early on, because it made me feel independent. I was in control of what I felt I could stand and what I couldn't stand. And she got that across to the whole tutors within the college that I was under at the time, and they all accepted that. And again, for that, I really thank them for, because it gave me that chance for that independence. But yeah, with tourism, obviously, with merit was fantastic. With sport, I didn't realise that even though it was sport that I was interested in, I didn't know how much came with it. But having a brilliant tutor that I had in Chloe, she just got the best out of me, like that English teacher did, really, gents. So I was very fortunate. Maths, again, because I had to resit, it really grinded my gears, really, where I was putting for early entries of exams to try and get it passed as soon as possible. And we had it different in college, where it was split through 3 different papers, which wasn't ideal, really. But we had number and algebra, statistics, and then shape and space unit in a separate paper. I remember the exact figures. First paper that I did, which was the number in algebra, I got 53 out of 55. For statistics, I got 48 out of 50. But guess what happened with shape and space? I got literally out of 80, like 28, and I was downgraded to a D. Now, I felt absolutely pissed, to be fair, that I got downgraded yet again because of that element that we had a failure on, if you like, if you called it that. And it got to the point where mum started inquiring with college. For college, like my mum was saying, even just for the exams, is it possible for someone, if I was put in a separate room, but someone was to steady a ruler for me, just as simple as that, so it didn't go right off the page, because of hand and eye coordination again. And it got to a point where they said, no, can't do that because it's an unfair advantage to you, to other students, which again frustrated me and mum. But we'd gone to the exam board, and the exam board was a bit more understanding. But they gave us a piece of advice, which I'm not really going to say what it was, but it was like, I can't really do that, purely because the college are more clued up than that. So I don't know if you guys as tutors know what they're trying to get at, but it was getting to a stage where I thought, shall I? But I felt I can't do that. I've got to be committed to this paper, and I'm set to my studies. And it got to the stage where it got to, like, after, including from secondary school, 7 attempts, I would say, that I tried to do my maths exam. It was every single time that shape and space unit that let me down, and I got a D. And there was one time that I even got an E because the exam marks gone up. So it was just ridiculous, really. But there we are. It got to a stage that in the end, because it was getting me down so mentally then, that my tutor, Lisa, she said, George, if you really feel that you can't attend maths lessons anymore, I'm not going to hold it against you, because even though we should, try and encourage you, she said, it's not that you've not tried. You have tried. But it's just doing you in mentally, and that's not doing you for worldly good for your mental state and for your confidence. So, and it got to the stage where it actually caused a friction within the college. And I was right in the middle of that, where I had my personal tutor for sport and tourism side saying, Jordan's mental health is important. The maths department at the time was saying, he's got to. And if he doesn't attend these lessons, then we're going to lodge it that he gets, like, excluded from college because he's not completing his studies. So I was doing really well in them other subjects, But then, on the other hand, I had that nagging in the background from maths department. So, I mean, what? I'm going to put you on spot, gents, but what do you think on that?
Difficult, isn't it? I'm not a tutor. I'm not a teacher. Obviously, I'm a coach, so it's different environments. And obviously, where I coach, a lot of the time, I'm quite lucky. I'm in control of the culture and the environment. So essentially, I make the rules. Obviously, there are some FA mandates, of course, like safeguarding and things like that. But generally, when it comes to these kind of things, which is what we're talking about, politics, I get to kind of be the judge and executioner. And a lot of the time, I like to think I'm quite empathetic to people's individual needs. It sounds to me that it's just from what you guys are talking about, that it's much more of a everyone against everyone attitude. It feels to me, this is what these people, this is where you need to be. This is how you can become better, which is something your English teacher did in your earlier years. So yeah, obviously I don't know what the thing was that you were talking about that you could have done according to the exam board, but it's just sad that essentially the attitude is you just need to worry about yourself, do everything you can to get yourself ahead of the rest. When actually, if we just all had a more of a community outlook, we'd probably get more and have much more efficient and better systems in place.
See, and that's the thing as well, is the fact that, if you're saying in relation to how many times that you tried to do that one specific exam and it was always the same thing that you were finding the hardest, that's a kind of way of saying that it's like, look, there's a reason behind this. So, you would have kind of either provided with that extra support, you would have provided special measures, obviously you'd look at it from a kind of strategic approach. And obviously, from mine and Luke's experience, we've been in the exact same situation where it's like, that there's certain children or certain people that struggle more with something than they do with something else. So you'd be able to kind of have that realization that it's like, right, okay, how can we approach this differently to get the best results?
Yeah. I think that's it, though, is as well that one thing that was put to me was, and I remember mum's exact reaction, and excuse for language here, gents, but they put to me, mum, and said, well, Jordan can have extra time. And my mum's reaction at the time was, well, what fucking good is that going to do? Because if I've still struggled with that element, no matter how much time I'm going to get, it's going to be the same. I'll be sitting there for an extra 40 minutes and I still can't do that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing, something that we say, especially in coaching, something that I try to push is people always talk about the player this, the player that, and they don't talk about the person. If that makes sense. So the person before the player is essentially what I try to go for. And it just seems to me that they're not putting the human in front of the student. That's how it feels to me. If you keep looking at everybody as a student, you're missing the actual human behind it. That we're not all the same. And that's not just if you got dyspraxia or whatever it is, like I said earlier. And it's clearly a failing of, like Cal said, in sort of the outlook of things. I mean, my honest opinion is I don't think there's a problem with exams. I think it should be an option, but I think option as well. I think the problem is that we try to box it in one or the other when it should really be an option. You should be able to choose as a student. I'd rather go with an exam because for some people, they need a goal to aim for. They need something to aim for and prepare for. And then on the other side, there are people like myself. I was way better when it was coursework based. I was like you, George. I succeeded way more at college than I did in my middle or high schools. Again, I'm not saying anyone's wrong. That's just my outlook. We're all different, and it's good to get opinions. And I've been really intrigued by everyone's. But I just think sometimes it's happening to go one of two ways, because then it's actually down to the individual. Then, and there's a bit of control. Currently, with education, it feels that students aren't in control. It's more repeat back to me what I say. That's how it feels to me. But again, I'm no expert. I'm no expert, by the way. I'm just saying my perspective, like outside looking in.
And I think Phil's got a very valid point there from what it is typically every day. And part of what my role is, and Callum's seen this firsthand, is that I'm sort of a devil's advocate because I play a role in between teaching staff and sort of the students that I have, and it can be difficult in the position that I'm in sometimes, because as much as I am a member of staff, I have to sort of toe the line with staff, but I also do the best for the kids at the same time. So when they come to me and said, "Oh, sir, all I'm expected to do is be robotic within that lesson," then I'd be like, "Well, no wonder you're not having much of a learning experience. No wonder you're not enjoying school." And that's where I think my vision for school changes, because we have to make sure kids are enjoying it first and foremost, and then we can start to tailor it towards more eventful experiences where it's going to be more positive, more engaging, rather than just do what I say, repeat that back to me. And again, I build upon what Phil says there, and that vision towards a tiered approach, because again, I think exams do have a place within that, but I think we have a tailored learning experience which is more featured towards what the students need. And I think we need to consider our match students within that, so are more able and talented, and how they sit exams and how we excel them, but also identifying our ALN learners, how we identify other types of learning strategies and how coursework might suit them. And I think there's a tiered system which has to be put in place, which we can tailor to all sorts of demographics and our individual student groups across a mainstream curriculum, whilst providing alternative education within that. So I think it's been a fantastic discussion, because you've taken us right through your early years experiences from family and those relationships into primary, into secondary, how this still has a lasting effect upon you, George, and those initial thoughts around what this episode has been and delivering your story. I've just had some sort of reflection as you've been speaking upon this, and my initial thought was to put this on the Unsung Hero series as a second episode, but the way the discussion has gone tonight, I'm actually going to move it across to the education series, because I think a lot of education has taken place in this, and we're talking about disability, additional learning needs, how the awareness comes across. I think that features a part of that series more effectively, rather than the Unsung Hero series, and building upon that initial episode, because what you talk about and what you say, I think, brings so much importance, mate, especially for our environments, from coaching to additional learning needs to school environments to alternative education, towards how college students think and feel. And when you talked about that awareness earlier and what your friends have been through as well, there's actually some thoughts I've got around that, which I'm going to sort of slip over to you in a different conversation later on. Just how I think you can have a bit more of an effect on that and have a bit more of a presence. But it's been a very, very interesting episode. And initially we planned for an hour and a half. And out of all the slides, I think we're just under a quarter of the way through, right? But I think that shows the impact, the knowledge, the skills, the experience of everyone sat in here, and how engaged they are with your story, Jordan. I think that comes down to you, because yes, there is health issues in there that you really want to talk about a little bit further, right? But what this comes down to is how much we're invested in you as free people, and how much further you can take this impact, and how much of a story you've got behind this. And every time the conversations come at them, and how you initialized this with me, I wanted to raise this awareness. I wanted to support you. And it's not about getting you on the podcast for listens or views or any of that, mate. It's about putting you first, as I do with every other guest who comes on. So when I do all the shorts and do all the extended clips, you very rarely see me within all of that, because it's all about the guests who come on. So it's this awareness which I think is important. And this is why we're going to have a second episode or second part to this episode, because there is so much content within this. And as always, mate, I'm so thankful for your time. I'm thankful that we've get to sit and listen to you. I'm thankful to Sarge for coming on and being part of it, and that Kallum has had an amazing effect on his first episode. But George, I love you, mate. This has been your episode, and I can't wait for the second part, mate. So I look forward to it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Luke, and thanks, gents, as well, all of you, for taking the time to listen.
Cheers,
tonight.
guys. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
But yeah, we try to be that group that can help be there for the players as a three, because I think you mentioned earlier, you want to have different characters in the changing room. You want to have different personalities. You don't want the same kind of people, because you're not going to be able to move forward. If you've got 10 people and they all agree the same things, you're going to get to a point in time where actually you're going to become unstuck. You need that one person to actually be like, nah, I don't agree with that. Or actually, we should try this. And I think that's why the huddle works, is we're all quite different as human beings, and I think you need 3 different people in there, because some players will naturally gravitate towards me and my personality, but equally some might go to the other 2, and that's absolutely fine.